Okay, we are starting a new unit today. We're doing Unit 7. This is a sort of a statistics unit. Today is all review. It's all, I think, the easy stuff you probably learned back in Algebra 1. And let's jump in here. Uh, we're talking about the mean to start off with in statistics. There are many ways to summarize data in school. What is used on progress reports and report cards? The average is used on report cards. This is also called the mean. An average is a measure of central tendency. There are several kinds of measures of center, with the mean or arithmetic average being the most widely used, at least in school. So how do we find the mean of a data set, or how do we find the average? Hopefully you remember this. This is sort of like it's the sum of all your numbers divided by the number of numbers. So hopefully that sounds familiar. That's just basic average. So on example 1, if John's grades in Miss Perky's class are these things right here, what is his average? So we would want to add all these numbers up together. So we'd want to say 89 plus 50 plus 75 plus 82 plus 90 plus 83 plus 77 plus 68 plus 91 plus 83. We'd want to get a number for that. I believe that's going to be 788. And then we want to take that number and we want to divide by how many numbers we just added together, our number of numbers. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers. So if we divide this by 10, we're going to get our answer of 78.8. So our average is 78.8. There is another measure of center. It's called the median. The median is the halfway point in a data set. To find the median, you must first order the data from smallest to biggest, and then find the number in the middle. So if I rewrite these 10 numbers in order, it would have been nice if they would have just done that for us to begin with, but they did not. So 50, 68, 75, looks like 77 is going to come next. Then 82 is the next number. Then 83. We have another 83. And 84. No, there is no 84. 89. And then 90 and 91. So those are our 10 numbers sort of written in order. And the median is just the middle number. Now, if there's an odd number of data points, the true middle number is the median. This is an even amount of data points, and there is no exact middle number. So if you ever have an even number of data points, take the average of the two middle numbers. So our two middle numbers are 82 and 83. And if I add those together and I divide by 2, I'm going to get 82.5. All right, the last measure of center is the mode. It is the value that occurs the most often. What is the mode of John's grade? So again, if I'm looking at all the numbers, the number that occurs the most is 83. That's the only one that repeats. So 83 would be our mode. Number 4, in the following 3 data sets, just find the mean. So you could hit pause right now if you really wanted to see, practice finding the average here. Add them all up, divide by 7. The answers for each of them are 11. So these data sets contain different numbers. So even though they all have the same mean, they all were different data sets. So basically, the point they're trying to make is the mean alone cannot always do a good job of describing a set of data. In statistics, in order to describe the data set accurately, we must know more than just the center. And this is where this thing called standard deviation is going to come in. Again, I'm pretty sure you heard about this. I think in Algebra 1. But if not, we'll talk about it right now. Another numerical measure that is important to statistics is the standard deviation. The standard deviation is used to describe the spread of the observations around the mean. So basically, how spread out is the data from the mean. The idea of standard deviation is to give the average distance of observations from the mean. To find standard deviation, there is sort of this long, complicated process, and we're going to talk about this sort of long process, but in the end, I'm just going to show you how to do it in the calculator. So the way we're going to do this, if we're doing this completely by hand, is to take all of our data points for, I guess if we're working with John's grades, so the 89, 50, 75, all the way to 83. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract the mean from each of those data points. And the mean was 78.8. So I have this table over here, and I've already done that because I didn't want to spend time doing this on the video. So I have each of my data points, and the way I got these numbers sort of in the second column is I took 78.8 and I subtracted it from each of these values. So 89 minus 78.8 is 10.2, 50 minus 78.8 is negative 28.8, so on and so forth. And it says, what is the sum of the numbers in this column? If you add up all these numbers, you actually get 0. Why? Well, all of these values, all of these data points represent, when you subtract the average from those values, you're finding the distance from the average. And remember, the average should be sort of right in the middle of like all those values. And so all those sort of things should cancel out, the negatives with the positives, and you should always end up with 0. So, your total distance from the mean will always be 0 for all your data points. It says, what can we do to fix it? What are we trying to fix exactly? We could make them positive. We haven't really talked about why we're trying to fix it, but we could make them positive or find the absolute value of each of these things. But what we're really going to do with these values is we don't really need to worry about making them positive or negative, is what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up sort of squaring them. But let's see here before, so let's see here. So we're going to square each of these values. I get all these numbers. So 10.2 squared is 104.04. Negative 28.8 squared is 829.44. And if I add all these up, I get 1,387.6. We want the average. So we're going to divide by n. And n is the number of units. So basically we had 10 grades we were looking at. So we're going to divide this by 10, and we're going to get 138.76. And this value is called the variance. This is not the standard deviation yet. The units here for whatever we are talking about is squared, because we squared each of these values right here in this table to get these units. And then when we found the average of it, we divided it by 10, but this is still from squaring these numbers. So what we need to do is sort of square root this number to find what it would be without squared units. So when we square the deviation, the units are now squared. And for standard deviation, we need our units. We need our original units, so we would square root. And we now have to flip over because this isn't all on the same page. And so if the standard deviation, so if the variance was that 138.76, we want to square root 138.76. And if you do that, you're going to get something like 11.779. And that is your standard deviation. So this means that John's grades vary around the mean on an average by about 12 points. And again, the formula for standard deviation is the sum of all x minus x bar, there should really be a little squared right here, over n, and then the square root of that. Okay, we're never going to do it like that again. we are going to use the TI-84 calculator. If you don't have a calculator, you can find something online. Just type in finding standard deviation of data, and you'll be able to find something for just on any website that would probably be able to do this for you. But for those that have the calculator, I'm going to show you how to do this real quick. So if we are going to use the calculator to find for us the standard deviation, the way we do that is we're going to put all of our numbers into a list. So I'm going to go back to these numbers right here, and there it tells you how to enter numbers onto a list. You're going to hit the stat button. Stat button is right here in the middle of your calculator. Ooh. Stat. You're then going to hit the first option that says edit, and you're going to hit enter. And you're going to see these sort of columns. If you have numbers already in your list, go up, highlight the list, and hit clear. And it should clear out all the numbers in there for you. And now you just want to enter these numbers in. So if my first number is 89, I would say 89, and then hit enter. And then keep going, then 50, 75, 90, 83. You can do this on your own. Once you get all the numbers in there, we then need to do something with them to figure out what the standard deviation is. So once you do the stat edit and you enter all your data points into L1, and I didn't say before, if for some reason L1 is missing, you can put it in any list. Just make sure you remember what list you're putting it in. And then what you want to do is if you want to find the standard deviation, hit stat again. So the stat button again is right there. This time you're going to go over to calc. And you're looking for 1var stats. It's the first option. And you want to use list 1 unless you used a different list. Let's say you use list 2. If you use list 2, you just need to come down here and hit second 2, and that little L2 will go there instead. If you use list 3, same deal, hit second 3. If you use list 1, then you're good to go. Just go down to calculate, hit enter. And it's going to give you a whole bunch of information. What you're going to notice, the first thing is the mean. That's 78.8. We already knew that. The second number is the sum of all the numbers, 788. We already knew that as well. Let's see here. If we keep going, these numbers are not important for you right now. And then this fifth option, that is your standard deviation. So I'm going to make a note right here on your screen. This little circle with a little hat on it, that is the standard deviation. And that's the same number we got up on number 8. If you keep scrolling down, there's more stuff. It gives you your minimum number. It gives you something called quartile 1, your median, which was 82.5, which again is something we already knew, quartile 3, and then your maximum number. All right, so now we're going to get to number 9, and we're going to talk about a few more of these things. And let's start. So, yeah, I would try this on your own. The following data represents the duration of U.S. space shuttle voyages for years 1992 to 1994. Find the mean, variance, and standard deviation. What I would do is I would put these numbers straight into a list and go from there. So if I do that, I'm going to go back to stat. I'm going to hit edit. I'm going to clear out this list. I'm going to hit clear on L1. I'm going to put in these new numbers. So my new numbers here, 8, enter, 9, 14, another 8, another 8, 10, 7, 6, and 9. Put those 10 numbers in. I'm going to hit stat again. I'm going to go over to calc, 1var stats. I'm using list 1, so I'm going to keep it the way it is. I'm going to hit calculate. I'm going to get all this information. My mean is 8.8. My median is 8.5. It says median right here. My mode, it doesn't tell you the mode, so you need to look up at the data yourself. It appears like we have 2 different modes. So we have 3 8s and we have 3 9s. That's fine. You can have 2 different answers for your mode. Your standard deviation. We're going to go back up. Remember, standard deviation is a little circle hat. 2.0396. I'm going to make that 2.040. And then your last thing, your variance. Remember, the variance was the number we got once we added up all the things, and then we square rooted the variance to find the standard deviation. Your calculator does not give you the variance. So if you want to find the variance, you need to go backwards from the standard deviation and basically just square the standard deviation. So if I do 2.040 squared, 2.040 squared, I'm going to get 4.1616, something like that. All right. When there is an unusual observation present in the set of data, the mean and standard deviation of the data can be misleading. The mean and standard deviation are both very affected by extreme values in a data set. These are called outliers sometimes. When looking at the center and spread in these cases, the median along with the 5-number summary are used. So the 5-number summary is your minimum, your first quartile, your second quartile, which is also the median, third quartile, and the maximum. So for spread, you can use range. So range is max minus min. Or you can find something called the interquartile range, which is your third quartile minus your first quartile. The interquartile range is the range of the middle 50% of the data. So on the last example, you know, this sounds like a lot. You're really not doing much here besides going back to your calculator and looking at this information. So if I go back to my calculator, you know, we just found this data. If you lost it, just redo the stat calc one of our stats. And let's see, our minimum is 6. So that's our first number in our 5-number summary. The first quartile comes next. First quartile, it says right here, is 8. Our median comes next. Our median is 8.5. Quartile 3 comes next. That's going to be 9. And then our maximum is 14. Our range is supposed to be our, so here, I'll write these underneath real quick. So this was our minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, and this was our maximum. Our range is always max minus min. And so if I do 14 minus 6, I'm going to get 8. And our interquartile range is always Q3, quartile 3 minus quartile 1. And so 9 minus 8 is 1. All right. That's it for the notes for the day. This was all review. Please feel free to watch it again if you need to. I'm not going to put up a video for the classwork because it's just doing the same stuff, putting stuff in the calculator and looking. So there will not be a video tomorrow for the classwork. I will put up answers for it so you can check your answers. All right. Have a good day.